Hi, Megan Brummel here with Wayfinders Leadership. Come join me on my walk today as I talk about self-care. I've been thinking about self-care a lot lately because we've been working, if you get our Insights Discovery Keeping It Alive newsletters, we've been working on a resilience series, and self-care is one of those things that's involved in boosting our resilience. But self-care itself, I think it's really important to say that self-care is not just treating yourself. Any Parks and Rec fans are familiar with the treat yourself mentality, and I think it actually has blown up so much that even people who haven't watched that show know what it means when we say treat yourself. But self-care is a lot more about just treating yourself. It's actually about making really hard decisions, and decisions that are actually uncomfortable sometimes. So I wanted to give you about 3 things to think about maybe adding to your self-care routine. This first one is pretty common and you see it a lot out there, but it's minimizing screen time. I wanted to talk about this because I am actually really guilty of this myself. When I'm feeling drained and like I've been up in my head all day, the thing that I probably go to soonest is scrolling social media. But after I do that, I waste time and spend, I'm embarrassed to say, I could probably even spend an hour scrolling. And after I do that, I just look at the clock and I just feel yuck. I feel a yuck. And it doesn't rejuvenate me, even though I have this thought that I just need to unplug and rest my brain. It doesn't fill me in the end. So limit that screen time. For some people, it might be good for them to unplug, but maybe put a time limit on it. Limiting screen time can also help us go to bed sooner, which is also really important when it comes to self-care. Another thing to think about when it comes to self-care is reevaluating your calendar or your commitments. Before you go and say, all right, Megan's going to tell me I can take things off my calendar, that's not quite what I'm going to get to yet. First, I want to talk about this idea of busyness. I think when I ask people, hey, how you doing? How are things going? Probably 70 to 80% of the time I hear them say, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Busy, but good. So we hear this topic of busy. A lot of people are busy these days, and it's this weird kind of two-edged sword where busyness is an expectation, like we have to be busy to be successful. And at the same time, there's this idea that busy equals stress. So I'd like to explore this a little bit. When you're looking at your calendar, first, ask yourself the obvious questions, like, is everything here absolutely necessary? Is there anything that I can maybe hit pause on for a season? Sometimes we'll put expectations, I have to do this upon ourselves, and it's actually not true. So evaluate that. But something else I want to challenge you to do is think about and remind yourself, why did you say yes to those commitments in the first place? I pose this question because it was actually something that I asked myself recently looking at my schedule. I felt like I was going to all these networking events, meeting people for coffee multiple times during the week, and I just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. I just feel so busy. And I evaluated, maybe I need to ask myself some questions before committing and saying yes to something. And so I thought, what could these questions be to kind of direct me on what I'm saying yes and no to? And I think it's important when formulating those questions to evaluate my values and what's important to me right now in my life. And what is important to me is connection with other people. It's risk-taking and adventure. And as I was looking at some of these values, I was like, oh, that's why I said yes to these things, because I get to connect with individuals. I get to connect with all sorts of individuals that's where that adventure piece comes in for me. I never know what to expect. And I've been reflecting on what's come out of a lot of the things I've been connecting with people on, and they are fun things that I never would have expected. And so for me in this situation, it wasn't that I needed to axe those things off of my calendar. It was that I needed to remind myself why I said yes. It was a mindset shift. Instead of viewing those things as, man, busyness, and busy equals bad, busy equals stress, viewing them as positive things that actually do align with what I'm doing right now. Now, I want to caveat that with, it's not that I'm going to back-to-back coffee and meet and greets every day. We need to have a strike a balance too between, responsibilities, things that, again, aren't maybe fun, but they are necessary for us to do, and things that are aligning with our values and that are exciting to us. And again, sometimes we just need to remind ourselves why that thing is exciting, why that thing is good. Maybe even those mundane tasks and responsibilities, reminding ourselves why those are important and the value that comes from those things. So just something to think about when it comes to looking at your schedule and self-care. Now, the last thing I want to throw out there for you to think about when it comes to self-care is challenging your thinking, especially your negative thinking. Those times when maybe we're upset with a person and we get in those loops in our head of like, how dare they, like, oh, I should have said this, I could have said that, and that would have showed them. I really would, those thoughts, those loops in our brain where we relive the conversation and kind of act out what we could have said to either get a better outcome or to get the outcome that we wanted. Challenge your thinking in those moments. Try and hit pause and think, what am I missing here? Is there something that I could be wrong when it comes to this situation? Because the thing is, when we go into those loops, we're not changing anything. In fact, what we're doing is we're actually just reinforcing those negative perceptions of that individual or that situation in our mind. So we're actually digging ourselves in a bit of a deeper hole in whatever we are upset about, because we're just thinking negatively about it over and over and over again. So it can be really helpful to involve somebody else and give them permission to call you out when you go beyond what's appropriate for venting. This is something that I do in coaching a lot. I tell my clients, there's an appropriate time to vent, but after the third time I've heard you say the same thing, I'm going to tell you that you are not helping yourself by reiterating that story that you have created about that person or situation. And so try to get in the habit of doing this yourself. It is a challenge, I will say. Even when you can stop yourself, it can be a challenge to think of something else or think of something else that's positive. So involving someone in your life that can maybe help you out with that and call you out is really good for that self-care. So hopefully these are some good tips and things for you to think about when it comes to self-care. Again, going out and getting a massage, taking time to, maybe go see a movie, go out to dinner. Those things are good too. They are part of self-care, but they're not the only thing. And one thing that can be bad about having that perception of self-care, of just a treat yourself mentality, is people are starting to view it just as a luxury and they dismiss it altogether. They think like, I don't have time for self-care because it's just a luxury, and this actually connects to that whole idea of busyness, right? The other bad outcome from viewing self-care just as treat yourself is an excuse to not do hard things. So we don't want to do that, because if we have growth mindset, we are looking to continually challenge ourselves and grow. And that means making hard decisions when it comes to our self-care. So hopefully this is something good for you to think about today. Let me know if you're interested in some more ideas and tips for self-care. Talk Talk to you later.